What is it about homosexuality that gets people so riled up? In seeking the answer to this question, I'm pretty much setting aside the whole biblical thing, which is not unambiguous anyway. Just look at the relationship between King David and Jonathan, for example. Although people may frame their abhorrence of homosexuality in biblical terms, I think their real reasons lie elsewhere, as is often the case. I never assume that the reasons people give for doing or believing something are their actual reasons. That's just the facade they present. Even if the reasons are biblical, given that I don't think the Bible is the word of God or divinely inspired, I still have to ask, why does homosexuality upset them, the authors, so much? Why do people who have no religious affiliation object to homosexuality? Well, some people try to introduce biological or naturalistic arguments. Some would argue that homosexuality is in fact unnatural. That doesn't quite work though, does it? Because there are plenty of examples of homosexual behaviour within other species. It's quite prevalent amongst bonobos, for instance, one of our closest living relatives. It plays an important role in social bonding and in conflict resolution. You could probably still argue, I suppose, that there are not bonobos who are permanently homosexual. Nevertheless, this does show how homosexual behaviour might evolve to fulfil very important social functions. Homosexual behaviour has been observed in dolphins, lions, black swans. As regards the latter, the laboratory of Professor Raoul Mulder at Melbourne University has estimated that up to a third of black swans are homosexual, and that nearly a quarter of all black swan pairings are same-sex couples. These couples are almost always two males getting together. These males sometimes steal a nest from a heterosexual couple and raise the young as their own. Or one of the males may copulate with a female, and once she's laid the eggs, they chase her away and raise the chicks themselves. These scientists believe that there's a biological advantage in this behaviour, as it appears that there's a higher survival rate amongst cygnets raised by male-male couples than by male-female pairs. And this may be due to the fact that there's an additional male to protect them, and that having chosen to be parents, they are far more caring than heterosexual pairs. Some would claim that homosexuality is maladaptive in evolutionary terms, but it seems not. As a scientist, my first response to observing homosexual pairing among black swans and other species is to ask how this behaviour may have evolved. That it does in fact occur suggests that it may in fact be adaptive, and this ought to be my first assumption. At the very least, I would have to conclude that it is not maladaptive. And why should my approach to the occurrence of homosexuality in the human species be any different? I would expect to find that it's actually adaptive. This would be my initial assumption. There's a TED talk by James O'Keefe where he discusses the potentially adaptive functions of homosexuality in human beings. I'll leave a link below. Such discussions are usually quite speculative, but interesting nonetheless. Other people express various cultural and social concerns about the impact of homosexuality on societal structures, family dynamics, and child-rearing practices and so on. Although these concerns may claim not to have any religious inspiration, I suspect that some of them secretly do. But let's grant them the benefit of the doubt. However, I would argue that any problems that might arise in society as a result of such things as same-sex marriage or having two mums or dads arise not from these things themselves, but from people's attitudes towards them, treating them as non-normal. To paraphrase Hamlet, there is nothing either normal or non-normal, but thinking makes it so. I have a feeling that the real reasons for certain people's objections, or I think objection is maybe too weak a word for this, but their objections to homosexuality may be somewhat more visceral. I think at its roots lies the same xenophobia that underlies racism and every other kind of prejudice, a visceral fear and hatred of anything that's different. This is immediately perceived as a threat. Ignorance, lack of experience, stereotyping undoubtedly play a role in this. Perhaps also some people's hatred is rooted in the fear that they may themselves not be quite as normal as they like to imagine. It's to be hoped that as these different behaviours and lifestyles receive more exposure, maybe take the kids out to watch some black swans or bonobos, but maybe some of that fear and hatred will dissipate. However, people's prejudices are notoriously resilient.